talk about a remarkable woman who was told that women should be just housewives, and a woman who managed to mobilize her country and win the elections. And she's actually the democratically elected president of Belarus, but the elections, since it's not a democracy yet, were stolen. So she's one of the generation of one member of a generation of remarkable women, such as Sanna Marin and Jacinta Aren. I'm very happy to host her at the University of Bucharest and to welcome also as a woman, not only a future head of state for Belarus, hopefully soon recognized fully, and Belarus will be soon also having the same representative as the people want, not a distinction between the political regime and their people, but also I hope to see her in the company of the other great Belarusians who also were granted the Nobel Prize earlier this year, together with their colleagues fighting for freedom in Ukraine and Russia. But since we're already very, very late, and once again, thank you for all your patience, I'd like to thank our rector who could make it today to say a few welcome remarks on behalf of the University of Bucharest. Rector, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much indeed. Distinguished guest, Svetlana Tihanovskaia. This is the right place for you to come if you come to Romania, because University of Bucharest is the place where values are more important than anything else. It's the place where there are students and teachers that have been on the front line of all social movements in Romania before the Second World War and after the Romanian Revolution. Romanians know that at the 0 kilometer of Romania there is the main building of the University of Bucharest, where there is a balcony from where the leaders of the similar movement like what you intend to do in Belarus, called University Place, phenomenon, Piața Universității in Romanian, protested in early 1990s for a few months against the neo-communism, against the remains of the communist regime in Romania. And later on, all the significant social movements in Romania were led or have had in their roles students and teachers from the University of Bucharest. Because you are the most important persons. And I really want to thank you very much indeed for what you have done. I will finish my intervention with a quote from Edmund Burke. You probably all know the quote. The only thing necessary for the evil to triumph, for the triumph of evil, is for good men to do nothing. Thank you very much indeed for doing something. You are a very good example for our students, and we will stand by you, will help as we can for you and for Belarusian free people to restore a free society in Belarus and all across Europe. Thank you. You have the floor. I look forward to hear you. Thank you.
I'm tired. Thank you, dear friends, dear students, dear fellow Belarusians, dear rector, dear Professor Luciana Gica. I'm glad to see all of you today. And I'm honored that so many students have come and have to say even a little nervous. You know, when I speak to students, I always try to choose my words with much more care. In contrast to politicians who are usually predictable, you never know what questions to expect from students. So, you know, today I would like to talk to you a little bit about evil. I know it sounds like the beginning of a fairy tale for little kids, but some of you might have already seen the manifestations of human cruelty. And yet I would like to tell you something from personal experience, from the experience of our Belarusian revolution. For some of you it may be an example of how easily evil takes roots. For many it can be an illustration of how you can join it and let it grow. Our experience can tell you how a small weakness, a small compromise with one's own conscience can lead to a big disaster. I know that you can find such examples in the history of your own country. Ceausescu, like Lukashenko, has created two parallel realities. On the one hand, luxurious things, crowds of guards, unlimited power, where everything is in the hands of one person. On the other hand, millions of human lives spent in poverty, fear, and injustice. Hundreds of deaths of honest people who wanted a freer and safer future. You know, Lukashenko is often compared to Ceausescu. Many even jokingly call him Lukashescu. And he also sees his resemblance to Ceausescu. He knows how other dictators ended up, and it makes him very afraid of suffering the same fate. Thousands of people, including my husband or my friend Maria Kolesnikova, will never forgive him tortures and intimidations. It was the people who died during the revolution in Romania that made it possible for the country's dream to come true. They obtained freedom and the possibility of a decent life for future generations. They won. And looking at you, I know that such a time will come to Belarus as well. At the moment, we are still resisting our Ceausescu. 1,500 Belarusians are in prison for speaking the truth. Every day, 10, 15 new names appear in the list of detainees. The repressive machine in Belarus sometimes hits deliberately, sometimes randomly, but always with revenge and always outside the law. Today, professors and teachers, doctors and businessmen, dozens of students like you are held in Belarusian prisons. They are being harassed. They are kept either in overcrowded ALS cells. They are not allowed to receive letters or food parcels from relatives. They are not provided with necessary medicine and basic hygienic products. Even bedding and mattress is beyond reach for people who dared to have their own independent opinion. I'm sure all of you have seen the photos from the Belarusian protests of 2020. I know that Romanians wholeheartedly supported the protest, and I'm deeply grateful for your solidarity. We stopped being afraid and believed that changes is possible if we all act together. That summer, the whole country became our family. We helped each other. Volunteers kept staying under the walls of prisons. Factory workers prepared strikes to protest the violence. And the students gathered at their campuses to stand together for the democratic future of Belarus. And we thought that our democratic future was close to hand, that we need to hold out for another day, a week, maximum a month, and Lukashenko's throne would finally crumble. But more than 2 years have passed, and during these 2 years, the repressive machine in Belarus hasn't stopped for a single day. We were mistaken when we thought that evil could be defeated quickly. Over 28 years it grew deep roots. And it's our responsibility too that we let it take root. We allowed Lukashenko to taste unlimited power, to feel total impunity. In a sense, our fear and unwillingness to get involved in the political life of the country gave rise to this monster. I think you already understand what I'm getting at. History rhymes. You can find many rhymes in the history of Romania and Belarus. And in these parallels, you can find many lessons. These are the lessons that we have learned over this long struggle, and that I would like to share with you. Lesson 1. Do not underestimate the appetites of tyrants. During the 28 years of dictatorship, many people in Belarus thought, "This doesn't concern me. I will be safe if I stay quiet and don't do anything wrong." But in 2020, it became clear, no one is safe. The more we allow a tyrant to feel impunity, the more the appetite for repression grows. There is no group of people in Belarus who hasn't been affected by this repression. Activists who have been fighting Lukashenko all these years, random people who prefer to sit on the sidelines, and finally, members of his repressive elite who didn't show sufficient loyalty. Feeling impunity, torturing peaceful citizens of Belarus, Lukashenko went further. He staged a massive migration crisis on the border with Europe, hijacked an international Ryanair flight just to detain a dissident blogger. And on February 24th, he teamed up with his tyrant friend from Russia and dragged our country into a criminal war against our good neighbors. Lukashenko let the invaders into our houses without asking the permission of the people. He knew he would never get it. 86% of Belarusians are against participation of Belarus in this war. After the dictator started this criminal war, Belarusians understood that now we have to endure two crises at once, to resist both the dictatorial regime of Lukashenko and aggressive expansion of the Kremlin. The war has become another lesson for us and the entire democratic world. Words do not work on tyrants. The only chance to regain security is uncompromising action. The second lesson, we mustn't allow tyrants to divide us. This will allow evil to take root even further. For decades, Belarusians lived in a feeling of loneliness and isolation, until one day they saw each other on the streets. And today propaganda is persistently trying to divide us again, talking about nationalists in Ukraine, then about enemies in Europe, or making criminals out of the Belarusians themselves. But Belarusians no longer buy this propaganda. We united in 2020 against violence and injustice. We united in support of Ukraine. We united to not let the regime destroy us one by one. And we realized that only together we can survive and win our country back. And finally, the third lesson. Whatever the price for freedom, it is worth paying. Belarusians are ready for that. The protests in Belarus didn't subside, it went underground. The level of repressions, which Belarus hasn't seen since Stalin era, simply doesn't allow you to go out and display the flag of free Belarus over the Gulag. That's why today you will not see the colorful photos of mass protests, but every day we hear incredible stories of resilience. Belarusians spread leaflets with honest news across the country. They help our political prisoners, the families of detainees, as well as Ukrainian refugees. Our partisans are resisting the occupiers by carrying out acts of sabotage on the railways. Our cyber partisans fight on the online battlefield, extracting useful data for future investigations of the regime's crimes. Belarusians help the Ukrainian army with information, sharing photos and videos about the movement of Russian military equipment and missile launches. All these people risk years of imprisonment under torture or even the death penalty. But still they resist. Because to give up now means to completely lose our home and to disappear as a nation. And dear friends, I want to share one extra lesson with you. You know, just recently I read the notes of the Belarusian academic Sergei Garanin, where he talked about his imprisonment. The security forces detained him at his workplace during a raid on the Academy of Sciences. Such raids are not news in Belarus. Educated people have always been the enemies of tyrants. After leaving the detention center, Sergei Garanin wrote about his impressions. And there was one phrase that especially touched me. He wrote, "I feel sorry for the young people in prison. It is much easier for us, people who lived under the Soviet Union, who remember and are not surprised by such human cruelty." And you know, after reading this phrase, I thought, the future that Belarusians are fighting for is when people know how to be surprised by evil, when people do not expect cruelty from each other, when such meanness is unacceptable even in small matters. Opponents of the communist government of Romania died for this future. For this future, dozens of peaceful Belarusians gave their lives during the protests. For this future, Ukrainian soldiers are dying today, and I'm proud that our Belarusian volunteers are fighting alongside them. You know, I'm sure that this future will come soon, because we will never give up until we win it for our children. And today I want to tell you, you who are already living in this democratic future, do not take it for granted. Do not close your eyes when you see even a small act of meanness, because then you will open them and see how a small act of meanness can mutate into great human suffering. Thank you.
We are the same generation, and I've been living during the communism, and I still wonder what would have happened if other people wouldn't have fought for freedom, for my freedom as well. So I really know that you're still in this fight, and we're in this situation. We are going to collect a round of questions, and please have questions or comments. So that, and if we have time, we are going to collect another one. So. Who wants to be the first for a question? Who wants to break the ice? Already one there. We're going to use the microphone so that people who are following us online also hear your question. It's open. It's already open.
Hello, I'm a journalist. My name is Anna Harris and I work with Radio France International in Bucharest. My question is, how is your hospital?
One. We are going to take around so that is perhaps a little bit easier. Also there we're having.
Hello, I'm a constitutional law teacher. I wanted to ask you, how can you build resilience in the civil society of Belarus, and how can maybe Romanian civil society can support the civil society in Belarus? Thank you.
Very specific questions. One more. Two more here.
Hello, I'm a student in the diaspora, and I have to ask, what do you think is the role of young Belarusians that are also in the diaspora? Do you think that they will have an important role in building democracy back home?
Hey, my name is Lutz. I'm an international student here at the university, and I would like to know what's the point where you would say the peaceful revolution failed?
Quite many already. Let's take this round and then we are going to take another one. Okay.
So first of all, thank you that you're asking about my husband. You know, when somebody asks about my husband, I think that they're asking about all political prisoners because he's one of thousands of them. Actually, I named the number 1,500 of political prisoners in Belarus, but the real number is much higher because every day a new 10-15 people have been detained, but sometimes their relatives are afraid that human rights defenders calling them political prisoners because the attitude to political prisoners is much worse in Belarusian prisons than the attitude to ordinary criminal. And political prisoners are very often tortured. They are humiliated physically and morally every day. Political prisoners in Belarus, they are marked like with a special yellow label, meaning that they should be pressed by prison administration, that nobody have right to talk to them, they have to be isolated, and political prisoners are often put in punishment cell. I'm not sure if you know how Soviet Union style prisons look like, but punishment cell is an awful place. It's a very small cell where a person has to stand the whole day, has no right to sit. The bed can be used only during the night, and it's not the bed with mattress, pillow and blanket. It's like bare wooden desk, you know, and they have to sleep. The temperature outside and inside is similar. You know, people are freezing. They have to wake up several times the night to for physical training, you know, to warm themselves up. You know, they don't get medical aid. You know, when in 2020 it was coronavirus everywhere, and administration deliberately rotated people with coronavirus through different cells to infect more political prisoners. Some political prisoners are in overcrowded cells, some are fully isolated. For example, my husband is for more than 2 years in isolation. He's in solitary cell. And but I have to say that all those people who are behind the bars, you know, they don't lose hope. They know that Belarusians are fighting for them, that democratic countries, democratic societies are fighting for them, that we demand release all of them, that we are creating multiple points of pressure on the regime, you know, to make them, to release of all political prisoners. Also, humanitarian organizations, you know, they are demanding the release of people who in extremely poor physical state. We have political prisoners with cancer, with heart attacks, but they are also kept in prisons, but it's doesn't have any effect. So we are sure that only when the regime is ruined, our beloved, our comrades, our friends will be released and rehabilitated. But for this, to achieve this, we need to mobilize all the democratic governments and societies. And the question is, how can Romanian civil society help to Belarusian civil society? First of all, I have to remind you that since 2020, Lukashenko's regime ruined all the possible NGOs in our country, like alternative, free NGOs, and all alternative media. And but NGOs, it's not about organization, it's about people, and people, a lot of people had to relocate from Belarus and to renew their activity in exile. And now new initiatives emerged, like from scratch, and people are studying how to, how to create something new, and to help people in Belarus, first of all, to keep Belarus on agenda. And it's very important that the country where the NGOs are blossoming, where initiatives are working very effectively, to connect with Belarusian civil society in Belarus or in exile. You can create many joint events, Romanian, Belarusian, or only Belarusian, to promote Belarus in your country, to strengthen ties between our nations, to show parallels in the history of our nations. You can help to organize different exhibitions of Belarusian artists, or to invite Belarusian poets, writers, to have some practice here, to share their experience. Also, you can have joint media projects. You can launch projects to counter Russian propaganda, because I think the influence of Russian propaganda here is also visible. So you can together do something extraordinary. I know how temporary young people are inventive, creative. Through different means you can reach population in Belarus and population of Romania. So we can share the contacts, and to connect Belarusian civil society with the organizations of Romania, just for effective collaboration. I have already mentioned that young people are, they are playing already a very important role now, because they are more mobile than older generation. They want to know something new, to study from the experience of young people of different countries, and of course they will play important role in new Belarus. Actually, I have to say that our uprising maybe became possible because new generation of people who haven't lived in Soviet Union grew up. Young generation who got access to internet, got access to possibility to travel around the world and to compare how people in democratic world live and how people live in Belarus. Because I have to say that Belarus is situated in a wonderful place on the crossroads of continents, and with good management we could achieve much more in economic sphere, in social sphere. But our maybe mistake was that we have chosen dictator instead of pro-democratic or pro-European leader back in 1994. But nobody knew, he was, he always told that, I will bring stability to Belarus, and people believed him. It was difficult time after Soviet Union collapse, and people wanted to believe his leader. But for sure, young people, young generation can work more effectively because they are educated much easily. They, as I said, we need more specialists in future Belarus. That's why we asking for this internship in parliaments and governments for students, to study how democracy works. And make and will have possibility to integrate the knowledges about democratic institutions to our few Belarus. And the last question was, I told that revolution failed. I told this.
When do we know that revolution failed?
No, when we know that peaceful change failed.
Look, since the beginning of the revolution, I'm stick to the idea that peaceful revolution are more sustainable. That through peaceful means you can reach more, maybe not so fast, but I really don't want Belarusian people to be like regime criminals, you know, who are beating people, who are using violence. I know that Belarusians maybe were criticized by many for not using violence back in 2020, but I have to say that Belarusians were not prepared for this. Belarusians didn't have a weapon, you know, and usually, you know, this violence, it split people. You know, people were sure that seeing that such massive protests, peaceful protests, will show the regime that, you know, we are безоружные, always forget this word, unarmed people. We want, we don't want revenge. You know, we want changes in Belarus. But of course, during these 2 years, many more. I wouldn't call it radical, but more stronger voices appeared. And of course we can't ignore them, but I think that we have till the very end to stick the idea of peaceful resistance, of peaceful changes. But look, there can be many scenarios of the outcome of our revolution. And but look, I don't know. I understand that some countries came to changes through violence, but we also have examples of peaceful changes. And I want Belarusians to be remembered as a peaceful nation, as peaceful country. And this actually shows our pro-democratic principles, pro-democratic values. And you know, this approach opens a lot of doors for us in European world.
Thank you very much. We still have time for one last round of questions. We have 2 questions there already, and please announce your so that we can organize. Okay, I'm over to Lisa for the update. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Adrian Stuza at Times. Maybe you're aware of the fact that there was a report from the Robert Lansing Institute about Russia trying to back Lukashenko and gain control of the army. Oust, basically kill Lukashenko and gain control of the army, the Belarusian army, so they attack from the north. Can you comment on that? Thanks.
Next.
Hi, my name is Alexander Kuliga, also from Moldova. My question would be whether a revolution or a change of regime in Minsk is possible before a regime change in Moscow.
And the next big question, we have in this side of the room 3 questions. I saw one here.
Sorin the University of Bucharest. If Lukashenko would be here, what would you ask him?
I will ask you.
Hello, my name is Svetlana from the Bulgarian Research Institute and the University of Bucharest. I wanted to ask what the EU could do more. Thank you.
Hi, as well.
Hello, I'm Svetlana, I'm a journalist. I want to ask you if how difficult is for you to communicate with your voters inside Belarus, and always through social media, how you keep the contact with them?
2 more, one there. And
Hello, my name is Tudor, I'm a student, and I was wondering if you've ever got scared while going through this mission, let's say, and how have you overcome this fear? Thank you.
Two more questions, one, and that's it.
Hello, Florin from GMC. What does the Belarusian society need the most in order to change the regime, and now is the right moment to do it?
Hello, my name is Mayhan Tanim. I'm a student here, and my question is, you're going to be in the NATO summit tomorrow, so would you like Belarus to join NATO someday in the future?
Very, very specific question, some answering yes and no, but we have just one last question here, and that's it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Karim. I'm a journalist. About Vladimir Putin, she was assassinated by Moscow because she would have provided information to the West about the war in Ukraine. This is Ukraine sources. What do you think about that? How do you comment that?
It's the death of the foreign minister. Okay. You can choose because we have just a little bit of time, but some can be answered perhaps very briefly.
For sure, I will not answer the question, what would I tell to Lukashenko, because I would mostly ignore him. I have nothing, no words, just no topics to talk to him about. Russia tries, what do you think about it? Russia tries to kill Lukashenko and get control over army. You know, it's impossible to get control over people who don't want to fight. Our Belarusian soldiers, they don't want to, they don't have anti-Ukrainian moods. В отличие от? Despite, no. On contrary to Russians, for example, we absolutely don't have, don't see Ukrainians as our enemies. We always had wonderful relationship. So, you know, I'm sure that even if Lukashenko or the person who would be after, possibly, if this can happen, what you told, would give order to a Belarusian army to join Russian army and to invade Kiev, our Belarusian soldiers would defect, would change sides, would hide, would I don't know, would escape any possible way participation in this war, because we really don't want to be enemies with the Ukrainians, and our people don't understand why they have to kill or die for the ambitions of two usurpers. So it doesn't matter who controls or doesn't control the army. If people don't want to fight, they will not fight. Who will fail first, regime in Moscow or regime in Belarus? For sure, the fates of both regimes are interconnected, and a lot depends on the outcome of the war in Ukraine. I'm absolutely sure that when Ukrainians win, and they will, it will weaken Putin's regime in Russia, and hence will weaken Lukashenko's regime. And I don't know how at that moment will Russians react, but Belarusians for sure will feel this moment of the most weakness of Lukashenko, and will mobilize the second wave of our uprising. But at that time we will already be ready for this, because we are building structures on the ground, we are building structures outside, we have network of activists, volunteers in Belarus, you know, we have such group of people, ex-law enforcement officers who defected in 2020, who didn't want to support regime, and now they know how this KGB institutions work, and they know how to paralyze this system when the moment comes, and already 200,000 people subscribed to their plan. It is called Victory Plan or Peramoha Plan in English, so we are preparing. But it's impossible now to launch any plan or to be active or visible on the ground when 10,000 Russian troops on our territory, when Lukashenko's regime is building new military institutions to suppress Belarusian people. So what the European Union can do more? I have to say that since 2020 we managed to build a coalition of democratic countries who are standing on the side of Belarusians. Of course, I see that some decisions need time to be made, that bureaucratic machine, it's rather slow in different European organizations, but I see consistency in actions or decisions of European Union, and it's actually what we are asking for. Stay consistent in your policy. Don't recognize Lukashenko's regime as legitimate, deprive regime of resources through sanctions, isolate Lukashenko's regime on political level, kick Lukashenko's representatives from all possible international organizations, and start working with democratic forces. And actually the first precedent already has happened in Council of Europe. The special contact group was created where representatives of Council of Europe are working with representatives of democratic forces. It's the first time in the history when organization is working not with government but with the people of the country. So we also we are asking to be consistent in their support or assistance to civil society, because you have to understand that 2 years is rather big term, and people are getting tired, people are getting exhausted, and only when people see see signs of solidarity, see that they are not abandoned, that they are not forgotten, that they are supported, they are welcomed everywhere to represent the interests of free Belarus, they keep this energy. Just imagine that Belarusians have this battery that has to be charged every day, not to lower it till zero. And our task is to exhaust regime first before people are exhausted. But and I say every sign of collaboration, of assistance, give us this energy to continue our fight. That a huge amount of people, our activists, the volunteers, are in Belarus, and of course it's our main task to stay in touch with them, to coordinate our actions. And thanks to internet possibility through chatbots, Telegram chatbots, through обратная связь, feedback on Instagram or YouTube, we see what people are thinking about, how they they express their attitude to political decisions or different initiatives. And we really don't want to stay in our bubble, political bubble, or a bubble of those who are in exile, but to keep constant communication with people in Belarus. For me personally, every week I have 2 or 3 hours of personal calls with Belarusian people, where every who wants to communicate can call to me through Zoom, and just to share our emotions, share our opinions. And actually most of the Belarusians who call from Belarus, they're not asking for help, for assistance. They ask, what else can I do in my situation? I don't want to go to jail, but I want to do something, so give me a hint what I can do. And it's very important, emotional sharing of opinions. have you ever been scared, and how you overcome your fear? Look, since 2020, there was no a day in my life when I wasn't scared, because you understand that you can be detained at any moment. You are target of this regime. You feel fear for those people in Belarus who can be detained at any moment. You feel pain, everyday pain for people behind the bars. You understand that those people sacrificed with their lives, with their freedom to give us opportunity to continue, and you feel this responsibility. And when every day you see how new and new people are detained, of course you know, somehow to cope with your emotions. You know, how do I overcome? You know, I have no other choice. I have to move forward. I have to, together with persons, to achieve our goal. So you don't have right to step aside. About NATO summit, I'm not participating in NATO summit. Belarus is not part of it, and the question if we are going to join NATO in the future. So we have to ask public opinion about this, but public opinion have to be asked after changes in Belarus. One person can't decide for the whole country, and that's why when democracy will come to Belarus, when we have all the after dictatorship reforms, when people will be involved in decision making of our country, so it will be time to ask them about participation in coalitions, in European Union, in NATO, or whatever. It's not time to discuss it now, because it can such questions, very sensitive questions, may split people, and we need unity at this moment. And death of so-called foreign minister of Belarus, you know, Makeyev was rather controversial person. He was all the time showed loyalty for Lukashenko, but he was. It seemed to us that he is more progressive person. He is more pro-democratic, you know, person, it seemed to us. But in 2020, he also stood in front of the choice to stay with the regime or to join Belarusian uprising, and he joined, or he chose Lukashenko. So, and since then, he was his voice on international arena. He spread the lie about Belarus in international organizations, and of course he can't be forgiven for this. But of course, about after death of people, you can say nothing or good things. So I will say nothing.
Thank you so much for this enlightening situation on Belarus and what we could have faced had we had our bloody revolution. And thank you for being here, for reminding us also about the Belarus hour. 9:20 every day from now on. We should think at this hour, on 9th August 2020, and until all political prisoners are released, we should remember this hour, 9:20. And I kindly ask you today, all of us, at 9:20 on the 28th of November 2022, the memorable day when a free leader of Belarus was at the University of Bucharest, to keep a moment of silence for all the victims of totalitarian regimes and all the victims of atrocities, wars. We are going to think about our friends from Belarus, but also from Ukraine, from Russia, from Iran, from Tigray, from Syria, and from wherever in the world we are still not free, also in our minds, because if we're free to think, we can freely choose. Thank you once again, and let's hope freedom will finally be here. Thank you.